Hey, welcome to Garden Fork Radio. My name is Eric. I'm your host. I have this podcast and a YouTube channel. I like to call it eclectic DIY, or haphazard might be a better word, or kind of all over the place. But today we're going to talk about seed starting and spring gardening with my friend Erin. Hey.
Hey, Eric.
Erin has a very popular YouTube channel and website called The Impatient Gardener, and she knows all the names of the plants.
I try to.
So we wanted to talk about starting seeds, starting a garden. I'm building a new hoop house. Erin has this really cool little greenhouse she just made a video about, and she also has this kind of basement. Well, it just looks interesting from the viewer side, I'll just say that, with tons of different plants growing. It looks kind of like a laboratory.
It is totally like a laboratory. You know how like a lot of people went out and like panic bought like toilet paper? Well, I started like panic planting seeds. It got total. I mean, I'm usually off the rails with my seed starting, but this year I just started. I'm like, well, I better plant more because I'm going to have friends or family who aren't going to be able to get plants or are going to want plants, or I might want more plants. And who knows if I'm going to be able to buy something at a garden center. And next thing you know, it's just overflowing down there. It's a real problem. Every year I say this is going to be the year that I stick to my list and I create a spreadsheet with how many I'm going to plant. And I basically ripped that up, threw that out the window, and just planted everything.
Are you going to have room for everything?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I will always have room. I have so much garden space, and I'm making a new garden this year. So I will always have room to stick flowers and things like that in the garden. But I'm sure I'll be walking around and just at some point with like a tray of plants and be like, well, this looks like a good spot, and plunk it in. I mean, I will find room for those things. But I will have plenty of extras to give away to people. And I've never had a hard time finding people to take plants at any time. So
that's why I don't grow tomatoes from seed anymore, because my neighbors just kind of shove them at me, you know?
Yeah, right. Here, take these. Yeah, one year I made the mistake of I had a lot of extra tomatoes and I put a note on like a free Facebook site and said, free tomatoes here, just come by and pick them up, or all organically grown. And within 15 minutes, there was like a parade of cars past my house. All the tomatoes were gone. And then I started getting nasty messages from people saying, you said there were tomatoes. Where are the tomatoes? I'm like, oh, God. So I'm never going to do that again.
Oops.
Yeah. Didn't realize it was going to create mass hysteria.
So why don't we walk people through starting seeds? What are some of the mistakes that you see people do?
So I'm getting a ton of questions about this too through social media and everything too, because a lot of people are really, really interested in growing food, which I think is fabulous. So one of the things that I think there's so many like different little things to know, but sometimes people will write to me and say, well, do I have to start things inside? Can I just put them in the garden? And honestly, for most vegetables, you can plant directly in the garden, but there are some things like tomatoes, peppers, melons, stuff like that really loves heat, where most of us in the United States, at least, are gardening in places where you don't have a long enough season to stick a seed in that kind of seed in the ground and wait for it to just do its whole thing in the garden. So you're way better off. I just think for those things, probably you're better off usually just buying a plant if you can find it, or starting one. But buying a packet of seeds to start one tomato plant is, maybe not the easiest way to go about doing it. So I would say in terms of things to be aware of is just keep an eye out for the things that really need a long season. And those are the things that you're going to want to start inside. And if you don't have a decent setup inside, which would be either some type of grow light situation, and you have that great video on shop lights as grow lights.
Yeah.
Or like you can grow a small number of seeds if you have a really bright south-facing window, but you can't like fill up a whole room, with one window and think that you're going to have decent seedlings, because you spend all that time and then it gets really discouraging when things don't work. So I think what I've been telling a lot of people is if you're just really interested in growing food, focus a lot on the things that you can sow directly that work really well. And a lot of that is greens, lettuce, chard, kale, mustard greens, all of those kinds of things grow really, really well directly from seed. You don't necessarily need 100% full sun like you would need for like a tomato or something. And that produces a ton of food and it's pretty easy to grow. So I think those are, especially if you're just interested in like, I'm just interested in getting some food out of a garden. That's a really good thing, especially those cut and come again lettuces,
Yeah.
because you can just kind of cut what you need for dinner that night and they keep growing. And that's a really good thing because if you're trying to reduce your trips to a grocery store or something, one of the things that doesn't last so long in the fridge is often lettuces. So that way you just go out to your garden, cut what you need, and it keeps growing.
When you're doing the cut and come again, once it's established and you do your first cut, leave an inch of the plant. People cut too low to the soil, and the plant cannot grow back from that.
Yes. Or just take like the outer leaves, and you can even do this on heading lettuces too. Just take like the outer leaves and pick the outer leaves from everything and leave that center to keep growing. So you can do it either way. Cut a ways up, like you said, or just kind of pick a few leaves from each plant and take that.
I've seen people do that on lacinato kale, which is also called dinosaur kale, and the plant starts to look really, really weird, but it
It does.
does work.
I do that. It looks really weird. It's like on a big stalk, then got a big stem like a tree or something, but it works.
If people, if you want to grow seeds and you don't have a grow light, if you have a shop light laying around, you have a grow light set up. I gang up two of them. I have a couple of videos about it I'll link to, but gang them up, and the seeds, once they sprout, the grow lights have to be smack on top of those seeds to really get going.
Yeah.
Oh, I think you're.
And we are getting a little late to start some things inside. So, you are sort of, at some point, you sort of get to a point of diminishing returns by starting anything inside, and you just want to start looking at things that you can either just buy a plant start from somewhere, or, for the direct sow stuff.
And also, if you don't have a grow light, I have seen some success with starting seeds in a little tray and keeping them outside during the day in the sun and then bringing them inside at night.
Yep.
But that's a lot of work.
It is. It's real fun for a couple of days, and then it gets to be a real bore after a while.
I imagine by now you've heard me talk about the Garden Fork patrons and the pre-show and the after-show, and I thought I'd give you like 30 seconds of what that's all about. Basically, there are people that listen to the show that contribute to the continued production of the show on a monthly basis, kind of like like NPR or PBS, where you sign on for X number of dollars a month. Like I'm a member of PBS, and it's $6 a month. And for that, I get access to the older episodes of like Nova and their science and history shows and that kind of thing. With Garden Fork, if you sign on for $5 a month or more, if you have more, that would be quite nice. But if you don't, do not do that. Okay. But for that, I send out just kind of the Mind of Eric kind of emails that also can show up on the app if you get the Patreon app. And also the pre-show and after-show when I record a show with other people. Because invariably, Erin and I, or Will or Rick and I, are talking about something else after the show because we forgot to talk about it in the show. And that's sometimes fun. It's really fun to listen to Rick tell me what I'm doing wrong with the show, but in a good way, because you need feedback like that. But you could also provide that feedback becoming a patron. So that information is in the show notes of today's episode. You can also go to patreon.com/gardenfork for more information about that. All right, so think about that, and we'll go back to the show. See ya. So what is this little greenhouse that you got? You made a video about it.
Yeah, I've been using these little temporary greenhouses for a long time now, and they're fabulous. So these are cheaply made things. They have little racks that kind of pop up, and the whole thing is covered by sort of a thick plastic cover, and there's a zipper on it and everything to go in there. And I use those for hardening off seedlings. So as we mentioned, I've got this like laboratory, a basement right now, and so I will start moving things out. Um, to that greenhouse to harden off. And normally when you harden off seedlings, so hardening off is that process of acclimating seeds from where they've been growing inside to the outside conditions of a lot more light and some more temperature fluctuations.
Hmm.
So normally they say when you harden off seedlings, do at least a week, and what you do is you sort of move them into a shady spot, and then you bring them in, for like 2 hours, and then you move them to a little bit sunnier location every day. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of moving stuff around and whatever. So the way I deal with that, since I have so many seeds, is that I move things out into this greenhouse and I cover things up with some of this really light fabric, like some people call it row cover or harvest guard. Cover it up with that, and that sort of protects it from the sun and the cold a little bit. And then I just leave things out there until they're ready to go into the garden. And as I leave that greenhouse door open, as it starts getting warmer, everything is acclimated to outside sort of slowly, and I don't have to go through that process of moving things around. So that's the main thing I use that little greenhouse for. And the nice thing about it is that when everything's planted in the ground, I just take it down, fold it up, and stick it behind my garage, and I don't have to worry about it or look at it the rest of the year.
Yeah, I have a greenhouse on the side of my house, and it's falling apart now because it was homemade and made out of wood, and wood and New England weather don't do well together. And I have to look at it 12 months out of the year, and
Yeah.
thinking about how I'm going to rebuild it. And I have an idea about doing it, but I'm like, a little pop-up greenhouse that I could just take down then would be quite nice.
It works really well. It's quite nice, and it's been really a lifesaver. Also, I have this fascination with dahlias, so I pot up dahlias early, and I grow them all out in one of those greenhouses before I plant them in the garden, just because I get flowers a little earlier that way. So actually, the greenhouse that I put up in that video last week, because a lot of people had asked me to see how those go together, is actually my second one of those. So I will have two of those greenhouses set up for a brief period of time here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
My neighbor gave me dahlias last year, I told you, and they are amazing. They're beautiful.
Yeah, and they're easy to grow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think for some reason, because they're such a big kind of bold flower, I think they kind of got this reputation as being really difficult to grow, and they're not. You treat them, if you treat a dahlia like you treat a tomato, give it lots of sun and consistent moisture, it's pretty much good to go.
Boom, done.
Hmm.
So, what are you going to grow, or what do you already have planted? So, this is early April. I'm in New England. You're in the middle of Wisconsin. So, what do you have in the vegetable garden right now?
Nothing.
Oh,
I know, right? Isn't that terrible? No. Actually, I just was out in the vegetable garden this weekend, and I stuck my finger into my raised beds, and I can get up to my main knuckle before I hit frost. So my raised beds are still frozen blocks of ice. Now
wow.
that top 2 or 3 inches of soil is workable. So I could have probably planted some spinach and some lettuce this weekend, and I think it would be okay. Um, but I probably wait till next weekend to do that.
Yeah, mine is a little more workable, and my garlic is coming up. So,
Oh yeah, no sign of my garlic yet. So I always, garlic's pretty easy, but it's always nice when you see it come up just to make sure that everything's okay.
I had leaf mulch all over my raised beds that had the garlic in it. I planted all the garlic last fall, and I put the mulch on there, and it looked all pretty. And then my neighbor came over to mulch up. He blows all the leaves for me, and he took his leaf blower and he blew all the leaves off my raised beds.
Well, good intentions.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He shows up and he does it, so that's not a problem here. I've got sugar snap peas in, and I'm going to try. I've been having some frustration with lettuce, which is a cold weather crop, and a number of videos I've seen on YouTube. They just lightly fluff up the soil. Is that a word? Fluff up the soil. And then they drop the seed on top. They don't cover it. And then they just cover it with a piece of plywood.
Oh yeah, yes, I've seen that.
So I'm going to try that this year, just dropping that on.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you can wait a week. You have to check it, but like in a week, it should start germinating because the lettuce seeds need to contact the soil, but not be buried way beneath it. And they need to hold their moisture and the temperature.
Exactly. Yep.
Not bad, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, I have not started growing peas yet, but I think if I could find, I have started peas indoors before, which I know peas are one of those things that everyone says you shouldn't. They don't like being transplanted. I have never had a problem transplanting them,
Right.
but I did see a very cool method which use a length of old gutter and you fill that gutter up with soil and you plant your peas in there and you start your peas inside. And then when it comes time to plant them out in your garden, you just dig a trench in your garden and you just essentially slide the whole thing out of the gutter into your garden.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it looks really slick. I would like to find a chunk of gutter to give that a shot this year.
So probably 10 years ago, we had the leaf-free gutters put on the roof here because my neighbor fell off his ladder cleaning out the gutters and broke his ankle.
I think everyone should have those gutter protection things. Gutter cleaning is so bad and dangerous.
So the guy, I said, save me the old gutters because I'm thinking about a rainwater collection system video, of course, because my garage doesn't have gutters. It's just a tin roof garage. And they're in the attic of my garage, but now I'm thinking I could grow peas in it.
Yeah, you should.
I probably have about 40 feet of gutter up there.
That's a lot of peas.
The other thing, I've seemed to read that you can plant sugar snap peas in snow, and I've tried it, and they don't germinate any faster than the ones I start later on or start in some little seed trays.
Yeah, and I think that that's the key. A lot of seeds are just not going to germinate until they get to a certain temperature. So you really aren't buying yourself any time by really pushing things to that degree.
I got my seed potatoes, and the great how-to just kind of laid it out. It goes, the soil has to be 50 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, why don't seed packets say that? You know,
Right.
maybe
Right.
they do, but I don't read
Some
the seed
do.
packet.
Some do. Yep.
So interesting aside, we were talking before the show about Johnny's seeds.
Yes. Yeah, I read they sent out an email saying that they were so busy with orders that they were switching all of their order fulfillment to their commercial customers because even though they had a lot of seed, they did not have enough manpower or time to get everything put into the individual packets that would go to homeowners. So were filling up the homeowner orders that they had already had, and then after that, they were switching to all their big sort of commercial customers or bulk customers, so that they could get all those orders out because all the seed companies are completely swamped with orders.
That's wild. Gee, they're a great seed company too. Employee-owned seed company.
Yeah,
They haven't been bought out by a what's that called? A private equity firm.
right. Yep.
So
There are some great seed companies out there with really cool stories. I mean, a lot of seed companies are still family owned or are small company. There's a lot of small seed companies. It's a really interesting business, and I think there's some great stories out there about some of those businesses. But Johnny's is one of them that does do a great job.
yeah, the fellow that started it built it into a big company, and then when he, instead of selling it to someone else, he figured out an employee ownership plan, and I think that is a great thing. Hey, would you like more of Garden Fork or more of Eric? Would you like to get it in your email inbox? I send out, just about every week, I send out a little email about Eric's World and new stuff I posted. I even talk about podcasts I've listened to or just interesting stuff. And usually, almost always, at least one picture of the Labradors, Henry and Charlie. You can get that by signing up for Eric's Garden Fork email newsletter thing. There should be a link In the notes to this show, just scroll down to the description of the podcast in your app, and I hope it's a clickable link. It should be. Or go to gardenfork.tv, and on almost every page at the top of the page should be a sign up. If you're on a mobile device, you might have to tap on there's a little menu bar, and then hopefully there it'll be a sign up, or scroll the bottom of a post and you can sign up there. Should be a link in the app here. More of Eric. It would be fun to have you along for the ride. It's kind of more brain dump Eric. Cool stuff. All right? I'm curious, I talked about this with Scott, our agronomist, in the last show, but about the raised beds, is yours are so much deeper than mine. I'm wondering, because yours are frozen now, is that just a fact of the mass of that? Because mine are much lower. Or am
I believe it's a factor of the mass of it for sure. And what Scott was saying about, when you guys were discussing how my soil is sinking, he's exactly right. That's exactly what's going on, which is just there's so much more volume of mine to compress over time that's why my soil seems to continue just going down in perpetuity. But yeah, it's just, I think what it is just this giant block of ice raised above the ground, because I think my beds are 21 inches tall, something like that. So there's a lot. They're 4 by 8 by 21. So.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be nice when it gets going. Were you able to run water down there, or do you have to bring a hose down?
No, we ran water over there, and I actually have drip going to all of the individual drip systems going to each bed. So they have their own little on and off switch, and they're all in the timer. So once that all gets set up and we get moving for the season, it's completely takes care of itself in terms of watering anyways.
Was there a particular brand of watering system you went with, or?
I did it all. I ordered everything through an online catalog. I think it's called DripWorks, that has all the parts, just because it was easy for me to look at the catalog and order things. I think, to be honest with you, I've looked at the stuff at the different brands that they sell at the big box stores. I think they're all pretty much the same. I don't think there's a lot of difference.
Is this the tape that rolls out, or individual emitters, or the hose?
So I have the hose. So what I have is 1/2-inch hose for some places, and those have emitters. In a couple places around the garden, I've got that, where I've got 1/2-inch hose with emitters, 1/2-gallon emitters or whatever they are,
Yep.
every 18 inches or so. But in the actual raised beds, I've run solid hose up through the 1/2-inch hose up through the beds, and then I've got 1/4-inch hose with emitters every 6 inches, I believe, and a line of 3 of those down each bed.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, it's all dialed in.
Do you have a video about that yet?
Nope. I didn't make a video about it because I don't like making videos about. I never want to accidentally share incorrect information. So when we were setting that whole system up, I was like, I got to figure out how to do this in my own head before I go about telling anybody about what I'm doing, because I might be doing it all wrong. So that's why.
Oh, that's the whole Garden Fork mantra, is to share false information.
Yeah. No, it's not that you share false information. It's that you say, let's try it and see what happens. And I'm not confident enough to say, let's try it and see what happens, because if it's a colossal disaster, you get all those nasty comments from people telling you you're stupid.
Well, I'm going to get those on the next, hopefully this will be the next video coming out, is I'm building a new mini greenhouse, or mini hoop house. Actually, I just took a break from that to do our little talk right here, and that should be hopefully done by the end of the day. But I took I call it the graveyard. Behind my woodshed is a graveyard of hoop houses. And I dragged them all into the yard, and the camera operator's like, what are they doing there? And I'm like, oh, don't worry, And I scavenged all the parts off them. And then last year I made a video about how do I improve my hoop house that broke. And so I combined those suggestions along with my scavenged parts and some 2x4s I had up in the garage. and I'm building what I hope is the latest and best version. And I'm all excited about it because, they're kind of a pain to lift up to work on under, you have to lift it up and try and get to
Right.
the plants underneath. So it's going to sit smack on top of the rectangular raised bed. And what I consider the back half of the raised bed, it's going to be hinged.
Right. That's the ticket.
So that way I can lift up, stick a piece of wood underneath, and then work. But also, when the wind blows, the thing doesn't blow away.
Right. So what will you plant in that bed underneath that hoop house? What's your plan there then?
Well, because of climate crisis, it's actually gotten warmer here faster. It used to be it would still be freaking cold right now. So I would
Right.
actually start my lettuces and stuff in there. So I'm going to start some warm weather crops in there and get a little head start on them.
That's cool. Now, and then will you keep growing in that? Will you keep that up and then keep growing in that to extend the season into winter?
Well, what I'll do is I'll disconnect the hinges for the main growing season, and then when it starts to get cool again, I'll drop that back in because I'm using these recycled door hinges that I found on the street. They were throwing out a couple doors, and I took the hinges off because they're great. And the pins come out, so you can just slide the pin out, and the one part of the hinge stays on the raised bed, and the other part is connected to your hoop house. So I just walk away with the hoop house and go put it in the hoop house storage area, and then bring it back in the fall and extend my season that way.
That's great. There's an author, her name is Nikki Jabor. She's got several books, including one book on year-round gardening, and she gardens in Canada somewhere. And she can grow greens. She has one of these hoop houses, and actually she actually has a couple of cold frames too. She can grow in her garden year round, even if she has to shovel out snow to get to it because of the various hoop houses and cold frames and things that she's got going. It's really pretty amazing.
Yeah, she's been on the show.
Oh, have you had her on? Great.
Yeah,
she's great.
Celebrities come on my show.
Well, there you go. Just like, oh wait, no, that's not me.
You're like moving on up, Garden Fork gets no views, and you put out a video and it's thousands and thousands of views. So
It's all about the timing. People want to talk about gardening right now. Come December, no one's that interested.
All right, I think people have reached their destination, and we both have to go back to work because this is a school day that we cut out on to do the show.
Right. Nice talking with you, Eric.
All right, everyone. If you would like to contact us, it's radio@gardenfork.tv. If you want to talk to Erin, you can find her in the Garden Fork Facebook discussion group or at theimpatientgardener.com. Go out and do cool stuff. We'll see you later. Garden Fork Radio's executive producer is Jimmy Goots. You can find more information about Jimmy and the custom hollow books he makes at hollowbooks.com. Our theme music is used under license from uniquetracks.com. Other music used in the show is used under license from audioblocks.com.